The sun is rising over the jagged skyline of the Pacific Northwest, casting a pale, clinical light through the blinds of 1,000 bedroom windows. You wake up, but there is no click of the ignition, no spark. Your eyes open to a ceiling you've memorized in the stillness of your own paralysis. Outside, the world is already demanding your presence. Emails are pinging, the city is humming with the frantic energy of 1 million people chasing 1 million goals. But here in the quiet of your room, the air feels heavy, like it's made of something thicker than oxygen. You feel like a ghost inhabiting a body that no longer belongs to you. This isn't the sharp, hot sting of a temporary crisis. This is the quiet, hollow echo of a soul that has gone into hibernation. You are exhausted, but sleep doesn't fix it. You are tired in a way that rest cannot reach. Often we look at this state and we reach for the most convenient weapon we have: judgment. We call it laziness. We tell ourselves that we've lost our edge, that we're falling behind in the relentless American marathon of productivity. We see our neighbors jogging at 500 a.m., our colleagues posting about their latest promotions, and we feel a crushing sense of moral failure. But laziness is a choice. It is a conscious decision to avoid effort because you'd rather do something else. What you are feeling isn't a lack of will. It is a total depletion of the internal currency that makes willing possible. In the psychological landscape, we are misdiagnosing a catastrophic structural failure as a simple lack of motivation. When a bridge collapses, you don't blame the cars for not driving across it. You look at the foundation. This is the core pain we rarely find the language to describe: the theft of the self. Burnout isn't just about being overworked. It's about the slow, agonizing evaporation of the things that once made you you. You used to have hobbies. You used to have a favorite song that made your chest swell with something resembling hope. You used to care about the quality of your work. Now those passions feel like artifacts from a civilization that disappeared centuries ago. When you try to reach for them, you find only a dull, aching indifference. This is the empty life problem, a uniquely modern tragedy where we have everything we need to survive but nothing left to live for. We are conditioned to believe that if we just push a little harder, if we just buy a better planner or drink more caffeine, we can jumpstart the engine. But you cannot jumpstart a battery that has lost its ability to hold a charge. This exhaustion is your body's final protest. It is the nervous system's way of saying, "I cannot do this anymore." It is a shutdown, a tactical retreat into the dark, because the light has become too expensive to bear. We live in a culture that treats human beings like biological hardware that should be capable of 99.9% uptime, forgetting that we are soft, fragile, and deeply dependent on meaning to function. When you feel this way, you start to live in the in-between. You are not fully asleep, but you are certainly not awake. You are hovering in a gray space where colors are muted and food tastes like cardboard. You go through the motions, the 9 to 5, the grocery shopping, the polite small talk at the gym, but you are doing it from behind a thick sheet of plexiglass. You can see the world, but you can't touch it, and it certainly can't touch you. This emotional numbness, this pervasive, hollow feeling, is the silent alarm of a burnout that has moved past the physical and settled into the very marrow of your identity. We have to stop calling this being tired. Being tired is cured by a long weekend. This is a profound disconnection from the reward of existence. It is the realization that the cost of your life has finally exceeded its value, and your brain, in its infinite cold wisdom, has decided to stop paying the bills. Before we can talk about fixing it, we have to sit with the weight of it. We have to acknowledge that the pain you are feeling is real, it is valid, and it is not your fault. It is the result of a system, both external and internal, that has demanded too much for too long without ever asking if there was anything left to give. Imagine a house on a quiet suburban street in Portland. To any passerby, the house looks perfect. The lawn is mowed, the lights are on, and from a distance the flickering glow of a television suggests a life being lived inside. But if you were to step closer and press your face against the window, you would see a different reality. The rooms are filled with a thick, stagnant dust. The air is cold because the furnace ran out of fuel weeks ago. The person sitting on the sofa isn't watching the television. They are staring through it, their eyes fixed on a point somewhere behind the wall. The house is functioning, in the sense that the structure still stands, but the inhabitant has become a ghost in their own hallway. This is the cinematic reality of high-functioning burnout. In America, we have become experts at maintaining the curb appeal of our lives while the interior is collapsing. We see this in the young professional in Manhattan who hasn't felt a genuine spark of joy in 3 years but hasn't missed a single deadline. We see it in the parent who prepares every meal and attends every soccer game but feels like they are performing a role in a play they never auditioned for. You are moving, speaking, and producing, but you are not there. There is a profound, echoing silence where your spirit used to be. Think about the sound of a forest just before a massive storm hits. There is a specific kind of quiet, not a peaceful quiet, but a heavy, pressurized stillness. The birds stop singing, the wind drops. Every living thing is bracing for impact. This is what it feels like to live in the mid-stages of burnout. You are in that permanent state of bracing. Your shoulders are perpetually hunched toward your ears. Your jaw is clenched even in sleep, and your mind is a frantic hum of what next and how much longer. You aren't living. You are surviving a siege. I remember a woman I interviewed once during my research, a high-level strategist for a tech firm. She told me that one Tuesday she sat down at her desk to write a simple email, and she found that she couldn't move her hands. She wasn't paralyzed in the medical sense, but the why of the action had completely evaporated. She stared at the cursor blinking on the white screen, blink, 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 and realized that the cursor had more life in it than she did. It was a rhythmic digital heartbeat, while her own heart felt like a heavy stone in her chest. She sat there for 2 hours in total silence, watching that line appear and disappear until the sun shifted and the shadows of the office plants stretched across her desk like reaching fingers. That is the quiet collapse. It isn't a scream, it's a sigh. It's the moment the light in the hallway flickers and finally goes out because the bill hasn't been paid, not because of a lack of money, but because the person inside forgot that the light was even on. We surround ourselves with the artifacts of a busy life, the smartwatches that track our steps, the apps that optimize our sleep, the coffee machines that brew on a timer, but none of these things can fill the hollow space. We are trying to cure an internal famine with external decorations. When you are in this state, the very architecture of your world begins to feel hostile. The bright lights of the grocery store feel like a physical assault on your senses. The sound of your phone vibrating is enough to make you want to weep. You find yourself sitting in your car in the driveway for 20 minutes after work, unable to open the door and go inside because the transition from one performance to another feels like climbing a mountain. You are a stranger in your own home, an actor who has forgotten their lines standing on a stage under a spotlight that is far too bright, waiting for a curtain that never falls. This imagery isn't meant to be dark for the sake of being dark. It is meant to mirror the actual felt experience of those who are suffering in silence. In MindRabbit, we believe that the first step to healing is finding a reflection of your internal world in the external one. If you can see the dust in the house I'm describing, perhaps you can finally stop blaming yourself for not wanting to host a party in your own living room. You are not broken. You are simply a house that has been lived in too hard for too long without a single day of maintenance. When we talk about this hollow feeling, we often use poetic language because it feels like a spiritual crisis. But beneath the metaphors, there is a very real, very physical, biological rebellion occurring within the 3 pounds of gray matter between your ears. According to cognitive neuroscience, burnout is not a mood. It is a systemic failure of your brain's ability to manage stress and calculate the value of effort. In a healthy brain, your life is governed by a delicate balance of chemicals. Think of dopamine as the currency of anticipation. It is the chemical that tells you that the coffee will taste good, that the project is worth finishing, or that seeing a friend will make you happy. It is the fuel of the reward system. But when you are subjected to chronic, unremitting stress, the kind of American work culture that demands 24/7 connectivity, your brain is flooded with cortisol. In short bursts, cortisol saves your life. It's the fight or flight signal. But when it never leaves your system, it acts like acid on the very receptors meant to receive dopamine. Over time, your brain does something drastic to protect itself. It downregulates. It essentially pulls the plugs out of the wall. The reward system, specifically the nucleus accumbens and the prefrontal cortex, stops responding to the things that used to bring you joy. This is the neurobiological root of anhedonia. You aren't choosing to be indifferent. Your brain has physically lost the hardware to translate an experience into a feeling of pleasure. It has decided that the cost of processing emotion is too high, so it has shut down the factory. Many peer-reviewed studies in the field of neuropsychology suggest that chronic burnout actually physically alters the brain's structure. The amygdala, The brain's alarm system may become enlarged and hyperreactive, making you feel constantly on edge or irritable over the smallest things. Simultaneously, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, executive function, and emotional regulation, begins to thin. You find yourself unable to concentrate, forgetting simple words, or crying at a commercial because your emotional brakes have worn down to the metal. This is the brain fog you feel when you try to read a book but find yourself staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's a signaling error. Your brain is stuck in a low-power mode similar to a laptop that has 1% battery left and dims its screen so low you can barely see the icons. It is prioritizing basic survival over complex thought. This is why the advice to just focus or try harder is not only useless, it's scientifically illiterate. You cannot ask a brain with depleted neurochemical resources to perform high-level cognitive labor any more than you can ask a car with an empty tank to drive another 100 miles. Furthermore, we must look at the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system. When you are burned out, you are often stuck in a state of sympathetic dominance. Your body is perpetually prepared for a threat that never arrives, leaving you in a state of tired but wired. You are exhausted, yet you lay in bed with your heart racing, your mind cycling through every mistake you've made since the 3rd grade. Your nervous system has forgotten how to return to a state of rest and digest. In the American context, we are taught to ignore these biological signals. We are told to grind through the fog. But from a neuroscience perspective, grinding through burnout is like trying to fix a broken leg by running a marathon on it. It only deepens the injury. Your brain isn't failing you, it is actually trying to save you. By inducing this state of numbness and exhaustion, it is forcing you to stop, because it knows that if you keep going at this pace, the damage might become permanent. The exhaustion is a safety feature, not a bug. It is the emergency brake that your body pulled because you refuse to let off the gas. While the biology explains the how, psychology explores the why. In the quiet corridors of clinical psychology, we refer to this state as a profound failure of the self-regulation system. Many of us are living under the shadow of what we call the performance identity. In American culture, we are often raised to believe that our value is an equation. Value equals output plus perception. We learn early on that love and attention are conditional. They are the rewards for the A on the report card, the winning goal, or the quietest behavior. When you carry this into adulthood, you don't just work a job, you perform a life. This leads to a phenomenon known as self-alienation. You spend so much time curating the version of yourself that the world demands the productive employee, the reliable partner, the strong one in the family, that you lose contact with the person living inside. The psychologist Alice Miller wrote extensively about the drama of the gifted child, where a person becomes so attuned to the needs and expectations of others that their own true feelings are buried alive. Burnout in this context is the moment the buried self finally runs out of oxygen. It is an internal strike. The true self has stopped fueling the false self. There is also the matter of high-functioning dissociation. In the original video, they mentioned depersonalization, but let's go deeper. Dissociation is the mind's way of leaving the room when the room becomes unbearable. You might find yourself checking out during a meeting or feeling like you're floating somewhere near the ceiling while you're cooking dinner. This is a trauma response. We often think of trauma as a single violent event, but developmental trauma or chronic stress trauma is just as potent. It is the trauma of 1,000 small cuts, the relentless pressure to be on, the lack of psychological safety in the workplace, and the crushing isolation of modern living. Many people suffering from this deep exhaustion are actually experiencing a collapse response. According to polyvagal theory, when fight or flight fails to resolve a threat, the nervous system moves into freeze or fold. This is the oldest part of our brain, the dorsal vagal complex. It is the same mechanism that causes a mouse to go limp in the jaws of a cat. It's not playing dead. It is a physiological shutdown designed to numb pain and conserve the last remaining drops of life. When you are burned out, you are essentially limp in the jaws of your own life. We must also address the guilt exhaustion cycle. In a society that equates rest with laziness, the act of being tired becomes a source of shame. This shame then creates more stress, which further depletes your cortisol, which leads to more exhaustion. It is a closed loop. You are tired because you are stressed, and you are stressed because you are tired of being tired. You feel like a burden or a failure, because you can't keep up with a pace that was never humanly sustainable to begin with. This psychological state creates a distorted mirror. You look at your life and you don't see your achievements. You only see the gaps where your energy used to be. You see the unread books, the uncalled friends, the unfinished projects. But these aren't signs of your inadequacy. They are the debris of a storm. We need to shift the narrative from "what is wrong with me" to "what happened to me." When we view burnout through the lens of psychological preservation, we realize that the numbness isn't a sign that you are empty, it's a sign that you are full. You are full of unprocessed stress, full of unmet needs, and full of a longing for a version of yourself that isn't defined by what you can produce. In the quiet hours of my research, I began to see a recurring thread in the lives of those who felt permanently hollow. It wasn't just a lack of energy, it was a lack of echo. In a healthy life, your actions echo back to you in the form of meaning. You do something, and you feel the resonance of that act. But in the state of anhedonia, that echo disappears. You shout into the void of your daily routine and nothing comes back. The silence is deafening. My specific interest in anhedonia and emotional blunting has led me to a conclusion that might feel counterintuitive. Burnout is a form of grief. Specifically, it is the mourning of the person you thought you were supposed to be. In America, we are sold a hero narrative from birth. We believe that if we are smart enough, fast enough, and resilient enough, we can transcend our biological limits. We treat our lives like an IPO, something that must always be showing growth, always scaling, always crushing it. When we hit the wall of burnout, we aren't just tired, we are heartbroken. We are grieving the loss of our own perceived invincibility. I've come to view the hollow feeling not as an absence of emotion, but as a saturation of survival. Think of your psyche like a sponge. For years, you've been soaking up the stress of the grind, the anxiety of the housing market, the weight of digital comparison, and the subtle trauma of modern loneliness. Eventually, the sponge is full. It cannot take in a single drop more, not even a drop of joy or beauty or connection. When you try to add happiness to a saturated soul, it simply slides off the surface. This is the nuance that many self-help gurus miss. They tell you to add more to your life. Add meditation, add a gratitude journal, add a new workout routine. But you can't add to a saturated sponge. The work of recovering from this deep exhaustion isn't about doing more. It's about the slow, messy, and often painful process of wringing yourself out. It is about shedding the layers of shoulds that have become dead weight. We also have to talk about the modern empty life problem. We live in the most connected era in human history, yet the depth of our connections has become dangerously shallow. We have thousands of followers, but no one we can call at 300 a.m. when we feel like we're disappearing. We have high-speed internet but slow-motion relationships. This lack of true felt community creates a social burnout that is distinct from work burnout. It is the exhaustion of being perceived without ever being seen. When you are perceived, you are a profile, a worker, a consumer. When you are seen, you are a human being with flaws, fears, and a need for silence. Most of us are starving for the latter while being choked by the former. My insight for you is this: your numbness is actually an act of integrity. Your soul is refusing to participate in a world that treats you like a machine. It is a rebellion of the spirit. By becoming hollow, you are finally creating a space where the noise of the world can no longer vibrate. You are not lost. You are in an unplanned sabbatical enforced by a body that loves you more than your ego does. To understand the full scope of this exhaustion, we must look beyond the individual and toward the environment. In the American landscape, we are currently navigating what some sociologists call an epidemic of isolation. We have optimized our lives for convenience and autonomy, but in doing so, we have accidentally engineered out the very things that recharge the human spirit. We live in lifestyle silos, pods of productivity, where our only real contact with others is transactional. You talk to the barista to get your coffee. You talk to your boss to get your task. You talk to the delivery driver to get your dinner. When your life becomes a series of transactions, your relational battery never gets a chance to charge. According to the biopsychosocial model, health is not just the absence of disease. It is the presence of connection, meaning, and a sense of belonging. Most people experiencing this empty life burnout are actually suffering from social anhedonia. It's not that they hate people, it's that the effort required to perform the social self is now more expensive than the reward of the connection. You decline the invitation to dinner not because you don't like your friends, but because the thought of putting on the "I'm doing great" mask for 2 hours feels like trying to run a marathon with a broken rib. There is also the concept of moral injury in the workplace. Originally used to describe the psychological distress of soldiers, it is now being applied to the modern workforce. A moral injury occurs when you are forced to act in ways that go against your deeply held values, perhaps by prioritizing profit over people, or by participating in a system that feels inherently meaningless. When you spend 40 to 60 hours a week doing work that feels soul-crushing or ethically hollow, your brain eventually decides to stop investing in the experience. The exhaustion you feel is the friction between your integrity and your paycheck. We also have to address the digital shadow. We are the first generation of humans who never truly leave work. The office is in our pockets. The comparison trap of social media is in our hands before we even brush our teeth in the morning. This constant stream of information creates a cognitive overload that keeps our brains in a state of high beta wave activity, a frantic superficial processing mode. We have lost the liminal spaces, the quiet commutes, the moments of staring out a window, the boredom that allows the brain to move into the default mode network. The default mode network is where creativity, self-reflection, and emotional processing happen. By filling every second with content, we have effectively starved the part of our brain that helps us make sense of our lives. We are overstimulated but undernourished. We are drowning in data but starving for wisdom. This modern empty life is the result of a culture that values the stream over the vessel. We keep pouring more into the cup without ever checking to see if the cup has a hole in the bottom. If you feel like you are disappearing, it might be because the world you live in only recognizes the parts of you that are useful to it. The hollow feeling is the part of you that isn't useful, your true, messy, complicated self retreating into the shadows to wait for a safer time to emerge. It is an existential protest against a life that has become a checklist. If you are waiting for a surge of motivation to save you, I need to tell you gently, it isn't coming. Not yet. In the landscape of deep exhaustion, motivation is a luxury of the well-rested. Recovery doesn't begin with a leap. It begins with a surrender. It starts when you stop trying to fix yourself and start listening to the shutdown as if it were a friend trying to keep you from walking off a cliff. In my years of observing human behavior, I've found that the first step to reclaiming your life is what I call radical minimalist living of the spirit. In America, we are obsessed with adding supplements, adding habits, adding productivity hacks. But your nervous system is already screaming full. The path back is through subtraction. You must become a ruthless editor of your own existence. According to cognitive behavioral principles, we must address the all-or-nothing thinking that fuels burnout. You feel that if you can't give 100%, you are failing. I want you to experiment with the rule of 5%. If you only have 5% of your energy today, how can you use that 5% to honor your humanity? Maybe it's not a 5-mile run. Maybe it's just standing on your porch for 60 seconds and feeling the wind on your face. Maybe it's not answering 50 emails. Maybe it's answering the one that actually matters and letting the rest sit in the digital void. We also need to engage in sensory grounding. When your brain has shut down its reward system, you cannot think your way back to joy. You have to feel your way back through the body. This is where the vagus nerve comes back into play. Recovery involves moving your body out of the freeze state and back into safe and social. This doesn't mean high-intensity intervals. It means non-striving movement, gentle stretching, the weight of a heavy blanket, or the vibration of your own voice humming a low note. These are signals to your amygdala that the predator is gone, that the war is over. I want to offer you a concept I call the low dopamine sanctuary. For 1 hour a day, remove the noise. No phone, no podcast, no useful tasks. Sit in the boredom. At first, it will feel like physical pain, that is your brain's withdrawal from the frantic dopamine spikes of modern life. But in that silence, your receptors begin to heal. They become sensitive again. You are recalibrating your soul to find meaning in the small. Again, the way the light hits a glass of water, the sound of your own breath. Finally, you must practice identity decoupling. You are not your job. You are not your brand. You are not the strong one. You have to allow yourself to be the weak one, the tired one, the lost one. There is a profound power in saying the words, "I am not okay, and I am not going to pretend to be." That honesty is the first crack in the mask, and it is through that crack that the light finally begins to get back in. You are rebuilding your foundation one quiet no at a time. There is an old haunting silence that settles over the American landscape at twilight, a moment when the frantic gears of commerce slow down just enough for the heart to hear itself beat. If you are listening to this and you feel that hollow echo in your chest, I want you to know that you are not a broken machine. You are a human being living through a winter of the spirit. And in nature, winter is not a failure. It is a necessity. It is the time when the energy of the tree retreats from the leaves and moves deep into the roots where it can be protected from the frost. We live in a culture that demands eternal summer. We are told we should always be in bloom, always producing fruit, always reaching for the sun. But no living thing can sustain that pace forever. Your burnout, your numbness, your profound exhaustion, these are your roots calling you home. They are telling you that the leaf version of you, the one that the world sees and consumes, has given all it can give. Now it is time to go underground. Many of you feel a deep sense of shame for this retreat. You look at your peers, your social media feeds, and the expectations of your family, and you feel like you are disappearing. But perhaps disappearing is exactly what you need to do. Not to vanish forever, but to step out of the spotlight so that you can remember who you are when no one is watching. In the clinical world, we talk about reintegration, but I prefer the word remembering. You are remembering the version of yourself that existed before the world told you who you had to be to survive. As we close this journey together, I want to leave you with a thought that I hope you carry into the quiet spaces of your week. Your value as a human being is not a moving target. It is not something you earn through your 401k, the cleanliness of your home, or the number of boxes you checked off your to-do list today. Your value is inherent, static, and untouchable. You are worthy of rest simply because you exist. You are worthy of care simply because you are here breathing in this complex and often overwhelming world. Healing from this kind of exhaustion is not a linear process. There will be days when the fog lifts and days when it rolls back in thicker than before. Do not be discouraged by the fog. It is just weather. Beneath it, the land is still there. You are still there. The hollow feeling is not a permanent state. It is a temporary clearing, a space being made for a new way of living, one that is based on rhythm rather than relentlessness and meaning rather than momentum. So if you can take one hand and place it over your heart, feel that rhythmic physical thrum. That is your life persisting in spite of everything. It doesn't ask for a promotion. It doesn't care about your productivity. It just wants to keep you here. For today, let that be enough. Let the world wait. Let the emails sit unanswered. Let the performance end. You have fought a long war, and it is okay to lay down your shield. You are not empty. You are simply waiting for the spring. And the spring, as it always does, will find its way to you in its own time. Until then, be gentle with the ghost in the house. It is doing the best it can. I'm Evan Reed. This is MindRabbit. Thank you for sitting in the quiet with me.